But if it comes off, of course, it could bring some significant disruption.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's Friday. Rejoice! I know I am. Coming up on tonight's show, despite the cost of heating your home spiralling, Chris Whitty is telling you to bin your old log burners and invest in new ones. Will he be paying for them? Yes, the nation's health is of course important, but should we have a choice in how we heat our homes? Surely, Comrade Whitty? Then we are delving into the murky world of the Twitter files par deux. New owner Elon Musk has released more information on how people were silenced and blacklisted on the site. And finally, we end this wonderful Friday evening with a very interesting discussion about democracy, or the lack thereof. All of that coming up after the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Laurence, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. A child with a suspected case of Strep A has died in Sussex, bringing the total number of deaths in the UK during the recent outbreak to 16. The UK Health Security Agency confirmed the child was a student at Hove Park School. It says it's working with Brighton and Hove City Council as well as the school to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms. Thousands of Royal Mail staff have walked off the job in a new wave of strikes. More than 115,000 workers rallied outside Parliament, demanding better pay and conditions. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including Christmas Eve. The Prime Minister says the government is looking at tough new laws to help minimise disruption. The Chancellor has announced plans to overhaul the financial sector, pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
A fuel poverty charity is warning the rising cost of living and cold weather will leave millions struggling this winter. National Energy Action says people are facing a choice of either living in unheated homes or racking up debt. It comes as the UK Health Security Agency has issued a cold weather alert for England, with temperatures predicted to drop to as low as -10. The Met Office is warning up to 4 inches of snow could fall in London and the southeast this weekend. And Brazil have been knocked out of the World Cup, losing on penalties to Croatia. Supporters in Zagreb jumped for joy as their team reached the semi-finals. They'll now face the winner of tonight's game, with the Netherlands playing Argentina. Meanwhile, England are preparing to face reigning champions France tomorrow night, and captain Harry Kane says his team are determined to win.
Into this tournament, hoping to and believing that we can win it, and we've got to a stage now where we expect it to be. And now it's about trying to push on, and we face a really tough game tomorrow, but I know everyone's ready, we've prepared, and we'll go into that game with maybe more belief in what we did back in 2018.
TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Laurence Fox.
Hello. Yesterday morning, halfway through episode 1 of The Rich People Feeling Sorry for Themselves, I got a phone call from a friend, a highly decorated military veteran who served in Afghanistan opposite Harry, or H, as we now call him post-documentary. Our unnamed soldier started a YouTube channel in an attempt to rebuild his life following the trauma of having his friends and comrades blown up in front of his eyes on the battlefield. He was phoning to see if I was okay, which he does periodically because he's a nice man and he is aware that suffering is not restricted solely to one experience or another. He said that YouTube had demonetized his account until the 5th of January because he'd been posting misinformation about Harry and Meghan. And they said this was an, I quote, a severe policy violation of harassment. Our unnamed soldier had broken YouTube's unfathomable community guidelines with the egregious error of revealing what he had witnessed as he served alongside the Prince, then Prince Harry, in Afghanistan during his time there. When he queried why his account had been demonetized, particularly in the month he needs most to buy his children's Christmas presents, he was told if he was to mention Harry or Meghan ever again in any YouTube video, his account would be terminated permanently from their platform. The mind boggles at the algorithm finding the mentions of the Markles in among the millions of videos uploaded onto YouTube every day and deciding which ones are or aren't pejorative to H and Meg, as we now must refer to them. But more importantly, whose job it is and who is paid to look for and remove any of them. This, sadly, is the cut and thrust of the online truth wars, heavily stacked in one side's favour, in one side's truth, rather than in the truth. Now, I know not whether my friend and what he said to me is true, having only his word to go by, but seeing as the Queen herself pinned the military cross to his chest for a very factual reality of the valour he displayed on the battlefield, valour witnessed and written on in the citation for proposing him his medal by many of his comrades, my instinct is to believe him rather than the terms and conditions who wish to silence his version of events. But I'll leave that decision to you. Which brings me on to Elon Musk. Last night, Musk released tranche 2 of the Twitter files via Barry Weiss, an independent journalist formerly of the New York Times, and in it, us conspiracy factualists found out yet again that pretty much everything we've suspected has turned out to be true. I draw your eyes and attention to the case of Jay Bhattacharya, Sunetra Gupta, Martin Kulldorff, and the other much maligned authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, the last piece of carefully thought through sanity before the world descended into the mass formation psychosis of 2020. For those of you unfamiliar with the Great Barrington Declaration, it made the entirely commonsensical, rational and humane proposal that whilst this nasty virus, which conspiracy theorists contend leaked or was released deliberately from a lab in Wuhan, China, the result of gain-of-function research undertaken there and paid for by the Americans because such research is deemed too dangerous on American soil, worked its way around the west of the world, then our best option was to protect those we love the most, the elderly and the vulnerable, but to let the rest of us share it around, get on with our lives, instead of destroying the world's economy and dispensing with almost every single fundamental human right we had previously enjoyed. It was revealed as part of the data dump to Barry Weiss from Elon Musk, Twitter's anarcho-truthfulist, that Jay's account and that of many like his have been blacklisted, deboosted or untrended as misinformed, misinformated disinformation by the Twitter overlords who compare the truth nowadays. Bhattacharya, Gupta and Koldorf and others gave us a way forward, one where our children weren't denied an education and people wouldn't have to die alone in hospitals saying their last words to their loved ones on an iPad. But Twitter and YouTube, our social media overlords, had other ideas. There was only one way out. There was only one way that would not violate their terms and conditions, and that way was the Fauci ouchie. We no longer live in a world of law. We live in a world of terms and conditions. And it would seem that Elon's terms and conditions, like Jay's, Sinetra's, and possibly even mine, and my decorated friends, are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. My guess is that much more in the coming weeks will be shown to have been just lies, damned lies, and statistics. And if Elon Musk really wants to save humanity rather than rewiring our brains, he should take YouTube, like Twitter, away from those who run it and gift it back to the people to whom it should really belong. So, first up, we will be talking to pollution. We will be talking pollution. So I'm here asking you the question, are pollution measures a smokescreen for net zero? Email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Laurence Fox. This just in from Chris Whitty. Having grown tired of shilling vaccines for Big Pharma, the Chief Medical Officer has turned his eyes to the glory of the sun monster. He says that burning wet wood indoors is significant air polluter and people should be encouraged to stop. Stop having your fires. Stop your jungle TV. Stop it all. He also claims indoor air pollution caused by domestic heating system, aerosols and cooking appliances are becoming an increasingly problem for the nation's health. With me to debate this topic, I'm delighted to welcome Environment Editor from the Daily Skeptic, Chris Morrison, and Pete Knapp, Air Quality PhD student and spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion.
Good evening.
How are you guys? You look more like a stockbroker than a man from Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, I know. On my way over here, I was thinking, I've got to look smart. I'm going to be on the telly, so I'm going to go. And I went to a charity shop and I found this absolute stunner of a shirt.
It's a barnstormer. You're going to go first as a result. What do you think of Chris telling everyone not to have their lovely fires?
I work in air pollution after having worked as a maths teacher in Beijing. And that's where I saw the smog really affecting children's health. And that's what caused a big change in my perception of air quality. When I came back to the UK, I thought, OK, I'm going to make a change now. So I started a PhD in indoor air quality, actually, what you were saying before. That's changed a little bit since COVID, but now, that's my area of expertise. And I'm really committed to saving lives through reducing air pollution.
Noble cause. Chris, what do you think?
Well, we would all like to save lives through air pollution. The Whitty report was very interesting. In fact, I read it, and there's quite a bit of science in it. He does talk about how, over the last few decades, pollution has declined dramatically because we've used industrialization to clean up, as industrialized societies do clean up. If we're going to start, you were right at the beginning, Laurence, when you talked about it being a bit of a smokescreen for net zero. It's yet more nannying from the governing elites, pushing us towards consuming less, basically. And if we're going to get worried about wood-burning fires, then we ought to close down the Drax power station in Yorkshire, which produces 6% of the electricity and produces it from wood pellets, which we bring over thousands of miles over from North America. And for some inexplicable reason, this is counted as green renewable energy. So it's okay, I guess, to carry on with that nonsense with 800 million, I think, of subsidies over the years. But if you want to light a wood fire, a cheap wood fire in your home, then there seems to be a problem.
Pete, as far as I remember, trees are renewable.
Yeah.
So are they not a renewable energy source?
Well, not really. I mean, even though trees grow, right, they are renewable in that sense. There's a lot more detail within that. So, for example, if you had an old wood that's got old trees and new trees, and the biodiversity flourishes in an ecosystem that has a mixture of ages of trees. Normally, when you're trying to harvest wood, you have monocultures of trees, which is a kind of a biodiversity dead zone. So we try to discourage monocultures of crops and of trees. We've seen this actually. Latvia is most of their wood goes to the UK to be burnt, and we've seen drastic declines in their birds, their woodland birds, because of this kind of.
So their biodiverse forests are getting cut down, shipped over here.
Yeah.
We're not growing our own. I used to live with 1,000 acres of woodland above me, which was chopped down repeatedly.
Yeah, well, I mean, the UK, unfortunately, is one of the most nature-depleted countries, and it has been that way over the past 1,000 years.
On an emotional level, though, I remember army friends of mine saying they call a wood fire jungle television. It's just like you can't stop looking at it. It fills the human being with such joy to be able to be warmed by something, to feel a little bit like you were part of making it. Can you empathise with people that want to keep that going on in their life?
Absolutely. I think fire is fascinating. It's plasma. It's not one of the 3 solid liquid gas phases that you get taught at school. It's this interesting, flickering madness, which is always changing, and I find it fascinating. The trouble with that is that when you're burning wood, the smoke that is produced goes in up the chimney and into the neighbourhood, and this is where the problem lies, because it's people.
Does the wind deal with that?
It does, yeah.
Turns it away a bit.
Not really, no, because you're producing in such high quantities. So 8% of homes in the UK burn wood, but it causes 40% of the primary air pollution in the UK. So it's a small amount of...
Don't tell Sadiq Khan that.
Right. But it's a small amount of wood burning, but it does create a large amount of pollution.
OK, I don't think anyone would deny that wood burning would create pollution, depending on what we believe pollution is. Compared to, as you say, it's the anniversary of the smog 70 years ago this week, and we seem to have done a great deal to reduce pollution. Chris?
Yes. Again, we go back to what they're trying to do. What are they trying to do? Stop us burning wood? If they're worried about the stuff that goes into the atmosphere, the best thing to do is burn natural gas. It produces very little that other than CO2.
But we're talking specifically about wood, and I think Pete has made some pretty good points. What do we have to counter him on the wood issue, particularly?
Whether we should... I suppose you could argue that wood is used by... I mean, where I live, near Wimbledon Common, you used to be able to collect it. They would put it in piles. Now that's all been banned. It's a cheap form of energy. We're required to take on more expensive forms of energy, heat pumps, air pumps. Good luck trying to get warmth out the air at the moment, outside and out of the ground. But I think it's all to do with demonising pollution. It's all to do with, human beings are messy. In order to live in a civilised industrial society, we have to have energy. We have to combust things. We have to burn things. We just have to accept that there is always going to be a certain amount of pollution around. We're human beings. We've lived with it. The alternative is to put on our Puritan hats and stop doing everything that's bad for us. Stop keeping ourselves warm, live in a cave, and where will that get us?
What's the technology? Is there any technology to have a wood burner that has like a filter that takes out all of the rubbish?
Yeah,
and can be taken away and transported and disposed of safely. Is there something there, or is it just blanket ban on burning of wood?
Well, if only that were the case, if there was some way to actually scrub out all
well,
of the
they do
pollution.
it in power stations, don't they? In coal-fired power stations, they have ways of getting rid of the nastiest of the nasty.
Sure, yeah, they're very expensive to run. When I was living in China, they didn't turn them on very often because they were so expensive to run. Right. But yes, scrubbers are a thing. If you were to be very, very wealthy, perhaps you could do that in your chimney if you really, really wanted to burn that wood. But there's within the wood-burning trade, there's something called an eco-stove. And when that has been marketed as being...
I already don't like the sound of it.
No.
I hate the sound of it already.
Yeah.
What's it powered by?
Well, eco-stove is powered with wood.
Right.
But it produces about the equivalent of 18 diesel exhaust particle emissions.
Well, fortunately, they're getting banned.
Well, no, this is a Euro 6 standard, right?
All right.
And having a wood-burning stove is effectively having an exhaust pipe on top of your house.
But that's what I love. I love driving through the country of an evening and looking at the local pub, and you go and the lights are on and you know there's a wood-burning fire there, and you know there are patrons sat outside nursing their pints, smoking, because that's awful as well. And you see the smoke drifting across the landscape because we have this wonderful thing called wind, and you just go, I don't want to swap that.
Well, but we accept a certain amount of pollution because we exist. We're humans. Yeah. That's the point. And so
like
witty is
farting.
Witty's, yes, and humans do as well. And we just create indoor pollution out wherever we go. Human beings are messy, but we that's what we do. I mean, nature is messy in that sense. What Witty seems to be doing is he seems to be putting on a Puritan's pointed hat and trying to ban everything.
He just sticks his nose into everything.
Yeah.
You, by the way, are the most sane person I've met who would speak for Extinction Rebellion.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it. I mean, there are plenty of us within the group.
They're screaming at me in my ear. Gentlemen, thank you very much for not debating and being really polite to each other.
It's a pleasure.
It's not how it works on this channel.
We should have more of this, right?
Yeah.
He's too reasonable.
Coming up, I will be discussing Elon's takeover of Twitter, with special guest Emma Webb, and I will, of course, be reacting to your audience comments. See you in 3...
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory,
twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Earlier, I asked you, are pollution measures a smokescreen for net zero? Let's see what you had to say. Leon says, yes, they are 100%. Thank you, Leon. You're sane. Chantel, not a smokescreen at all, just dealing with the biggest problem the world has ever faced. Yeah, people having a fire. Right, Paul says, one day we will look back on net zero and realise what an unnecessary waste of time and money it is. I don't think we will. One day we'll all be freezing in a cave going, what the hell were we thinking? Pat says, dealing with air pollution and global warming is worth paying for, a bit more for, and getting an electric car. I don't see what the big deal is, except your electric car is charged up as a result of a coal-fired power station, or by a solar panel made in China, which was made by a coal-fired power station. Anyway, another viewer says, are pollution measures a smokescreen for net zero? No, it's to raise more money for the rich and Sadiq Khan to dig himself out of the deep hole he's in. 68% of people don't like Sadiq's ULEZ plans, but he's going to go ahead with them anyway. Anyway, thank you for sending me your views. Keep them coming. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Laurence Right. Elon is unleashing Twitter from the lefty bindings it has been shackled to. Yep, it's the Twitter files saga. Get your popcorn ready. The platform had a secret blacklist of topics and accounts to prevent them from trending, according to data obtained by journalist Barry Weiss. Weiss made the revelations on Twitter last night in a second deluge of what's been dubbed the Twitter files. She reported that Twitter used visibility filtering to downplay accounts they objected to and had people working to reduce the traction gained by individuals or their tweets. Elon Musk, who bought Twitter in October for 44 billion quid, really well spent, responded gleefully about the revelations regarding the company he now owns, retweeting Vice's thread and adding a very cheeky popcorn emoji. So, joining me to discuss Twitter's antics in the UK is the UK director of the Common Sense Society, Emma Alberta Webb.
Good to be with you, Laurence.
How are you?
Well, I, for one, am shocked. Are you not shocked at these revelations that shadow banning happened to be a real thing?
It's broken me. I thought Twitter was a sort of crucible of honesty, truth, and political neutrality. Are you happy about it?
I think it's fantastic that Elon Musk is being transparent in this way by releasing these things. What I thought was really interesting is that, so firstly, for a bit of background, that these Twitter files have been released to two journalists, Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi. And Matt Taibbi put on his Twitter a sort of supplemental to their releasing of these files, explaining why there had been a slight delay in releasing the second batch, which we've just had drop. And the reason for that was actually because they discovered that Elon had fired a guy who had been working as their most senior legal counsel. And that this was partly because he had edited the first batch, so he'd been involved without the new management knowing that. So this just shows how deep the rot within Twitter goes, and that phrase visibility filtering it's so perfectly sinister.
Isn't it just? It's all these little words put together that make you go ooh. Tell me two things. One, should he buy YouTube? And two, one, what's coming next from the Twitter data dump, and should he buy YouTube?
Well, I don't know what could possibly be coming next from YouTube, from the Twitter dump. I imagine that this is going to be I think probably that they've got a lot of documents that they need to wade through. And once they've got that in its entirety, I think that we have no idea how deep this is going to go. When it comes to YouTube, I don't think that Elon's necessarily going to be able to buy YouTube, particularly because maybe he'll make Twitter into something fantastically profitable, who knows? But I think we already know from experience, and we know from the way that they behaved during the pandemic particularly, that companies like YouTube and Google employ similar techniques to the ones that we've seen. So this idea of filtering, visibility filtering, is similar to this concept of friction, where basically any information that a company doesn't want you to see, they can apply different levels of friction to make it less likely that you will come across that in your searches. So I think what we really need is more journalists like Barry Weiss really looking into the sorts of things that these companies are doing on the sort of deep level. And I think also interestingly, as we saw from the first Twitter dump, this very, very close relationship between big tech and particularly in America, the Democratic Party. Elon Musk himself said that Twitter had basically become another limb of the Democratic Party, and over the Hunter Biden laptop leaks, were just answering to them and taking down anything the Democratic Party asked them to take down. And I think that changes the debate that we're having around big tech being, the public square, because if they do have such close relationships with the government, and the same thing with YouTube as well, that YouTube's definition of misinformation was throughout the pandemic was hooked to the World Health Organization, other local health bodies, and the information that they were putting out. And anybody who put out anything that, even if it turned out to be true, that contradicted that, had videos taken down and all that sort of thing. So I think that this is a rabbit hole that goes very, very deep.
I saw Jay Bhattacharya's tweet this morning, and it actually put a lump in my throat, because you can tell this is a really, really nice man, on top of being one of the finest epidemiologists on the planet. And he just was saying, I'm so shocked what damage has been done to children's lives, to every citizen across the West particularly. And, should there be an absolute outrage, now that that we've been booted at and screamed at and called all names under the sun, should we be turning around and going to the people that treated us, the Piers Morgans of this world, who went at us? How should we be dealing with them moving forward?
Well, you have all of these parties, groups who have been increasingly lobbying the big tech companies for more and more monitoring, more and more censorship online. I think what we should be doing is pushing for ethics, because what Twitter did with respect to the elections in the United States was manipulating. Was manipulating democracy. It's completely unethical.
You think he's rigging an election?
Well, what they've done with Jay Bhattacharya as well, that is also deeply unethical, because the consequences of those lockdown policies for children that Bhattacharya was trying to raise, those are really serious consequences that needed to be discussed, and Twitter knowingly filtered that information so that people couldn't access it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be having a really serious conversation about big tech and ethics and about AI and ethics.
And we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Will you stay with me for a minute? Coming up, I will be right back, and I'll be reading and responding to your views. Back in 3.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time for some more of your views. And I've been asking, are air pollution measures a smokescreen for net zero? Alice says, yes, the net zero agenda is just the project of rich bureaucrats that will do nothing but rinse the poor and line the pockets of manufacturing bosses. Air pollution is just another way of excusing this scam even more. Emma, what do you reckon?
I think that all of this stuff around Sadiq Khan's EULA's charge, I think it's just a piggy bank. They're just trying to raise more money for TfL to fill the black hole that was caused by lockdown. And I agree with the gist of that. I think it's cynical.
Cynical?
I think it's cynical, and there are a lot of people who have sort of personal investment in this that has nothing to do with saving the planet.
It's ideological nonsense, isn't it? Trevor says the only smokescreen is the black cloud of pollution being spread all across our cities. Time to sort it out. Where is this black cloud? I've been looking up every day and it seems rather clear. Anyway, another viewer says, not a fan of pollution whatsoever, so what's your point? My point is, I don't want to be told what I can and can't do, where I can and can't drive, whether I have to have a climate lockdown. I want to just get on with my life and allow my children to, too. Like, remember, in the olden days when we dreamed of a better future for them? Anyway, Jacob says, I'll never understand the obsession from the righties of getting rid of any measures designed to quite literally save the planet. Weird. Why does people assume that people who lean right don't want to save the planet? They're actually called conservatives, which means they want to conserve things, including our culture and our right to happiness. I live, says Peter, in a 16th century Grade 2 listed property. My only heating is supplied by 2 log-burning stoves. I cannot have a cavity wall installation because I have no cavity. Central heating is problematic because of the listing. Am I wrong for using log-burning stoves to heat my home? I would say that you should demolish your home, replace it with a little box with no windows and live a miserable life for the rest of your life. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for sending me your thoughts. We will be back after the break.
On Mark Dolan tonight, starting at the brand new time of 8 p.m, legendary political journalist Michael Crick, reality star and superwag Danielle Lloyd on being a World Cup girlfriend, and no-nonsense, un-PC political commentator Godfrey Bloom. From 9 p.m, In My Big Opinion, as Britain opens its first coal mine in decades, common sense politics seems to be returning to this country, and energy independence beckons. In my take at 10, the horrors of a cashless society. My Mark Meets guest is a man who brought down a bank. Nick Leeson tells his incredible story. Plus, radio and Fleet Street legend Mike Porky Parry, showbiz queen Lizzie Cundy, and the brilliantly measured political commentator Emma Burnell. That's Mark Dolan tonight on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. Earlier today, I invited Eva Vladingerbroek to dish it out with me, and here is what happened. Chin chin, Eva Vladingerbroek. Is that good? Cheers. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's good.
Where
that's
are you
great.
from?
Where are you from?
I'm from Sweden. I'm not. Thanks so much for sending me the World Health Organization report yesterday, which was like, oh Lord, what's going on now? And what is going on in this report? Tell me.
It's another attempt of Dr. Tedros, the
communist
China shill, I guess, to take away our last little bit of joy in life, I suppose.
What's it saying?
So this is the zero draft for the pandemic treaty that they've been talking about for a long while. A couple of months ago, there was a big fuzz about them talking about this pandemic and amending the international health regulations and thankfully people got onto it and said, oh, we really don't want Dr. Tedros to be the one to decide when there's a pandemic and how to respond to it just by himself, because that was basically what he was proposing. Which, sounds like a great idea to have one guy in charge of all of that.
Yeah.
So thankfully, a lot of African nations actually shut those amendments down that were put forward by the Biden administration. Surprise, surprise.
Which was just basically saying that they could declare a pandemic, and then also there's some language inside of it which says, there will be universal health interventions and stuff like that.
Yes, well, that's kind of what they're doing, trying again now. So those amendments were shut down by those African countries and Brazil. And
Love
now
Africa and Brazil.
I'm like, oh, thank you for saving Western democracy, Africa. It's like, yeah, great. I mean, we were happy. But now they're trying again with this pandemic treaty. And they just put forward the draft. And this is a legally binding instrument. So if every single country in the world, because every single country in the world is a member basically of the World Health Organization, if they ratify this treaty, then you have a global, pandemic response laid out by the World Health Organization.
It's not democratic at all. That's all. It's like COP26. They just come and think up stupid ideas and then impose it on the rest of us without any democratic scrutiny whatsoever.
Oh, it's like there's zero democratic legitimation in with this, all of this.
What happened then with the Dutch? What did the Dutch do?
Oh, well, that's the thing. So this pandemic treaty, if you go and see what it says, so I can tell you a little bit about, what they're proposing so people know how they're going to take all of our joy away. So the whole thing, if you read it, obviously they talk about gender equality and everything again.
Of course, because it's important in pandemics, gender equality.
You have to get it in there. So that's interesting. But then where it gets scary is when they're talking about strengthening and sustaining capacities for pandemic prevention and then preparedness, response, and the recovery. So they say that they want to build measures to reinforce surveillance systems.
Oh, God.
Sounds good, huh? To prevent outbreak and things like that. And then they talk about relevant tools, genomic sequencing, etc., analyzing and sharing information. So just basically, it would be permanently the situation that we had with COVID, during COVID, with the vaccine passports, etc. That's what they're hinting towards. So, all of your information, your medical privacy, any type of privacy, freedom of movement, all of that will be decided by the World Health Organization on the basis of this treaty, if this gets ratified.
That's not good, especially not globally.
No, they're talking also, again, about combating misinformation. So
thank God for Elon, though. Elon's bought Twitter, so we don't have misinformation anymore.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets interesting, because with this pandemic treaty, this would be law. So then Elon Musk, can do whatever he wishes, but not really, because there is a law that all these countries will have to abide by.
But I don't understand where it's coming from. I don't understand where, I know that it's the same as this thing about, say, the farmers or something like that. It can't be popular amongst the Dutch people.
No, it isn't.
To put farmers out of business.
No.
So why does it manage to get through all of this stuff, all of these sort of globalist treaties? Why do they get through? Who signs them? Your parliament voted against it, didn't it?
It's almost like every single, just the whole democracy doesn't function anymore. So what 10 years ago would have, meant that our government would have gotten a motion of distrust, for example, for what they're doing with the farmers now. None of that ever seems to make any impact anymore. So nobody's ever held accountable. I think probably because we've already given up so much of our sovereignty to these organizations that are now directly influencing our laws, that you don't really know who to hold accountable anymore. And yeah, I mean, we're now at the point where just 2 days ago, for example, we're talking about this pandemic treaty, but the European Union is doing something else. They have the European Digital Identity Project.
Yeah.
I've talked about that a ton of times, which is basically the same as this. It's a surveillance and control society with a digital wallet on your phone that you need for everything. You need to always identify yourself, whatever you do, through this governmental app. Where all your data will be stored, and it's like a vaccine passport on steroids, this digital identity.
But how do we stop it?
Well, we can't. That's the thing. So,
you can not own a phone.
Not through this. Yeah. Well, you can choose to not partake in it for as long as that's possible. But so the Dutch parliament 2 days ago said to our government through a motion, they said, we don't want you to go to Brussels and sign for this digital identity project. So the majority of the Dutch parliament said no. And what does our state secretary do? She goes anyway, she signs.
So that is really an example of democracy. I've got this horrible feeling that democracy is completely gone.
Well, it's like it's a shell. It's an illusion still, because if your parliament says, no, we don't want this, and those are the people who are supposed to represent us, and the government just says, well, that's fun for you, but I'm not going to listen, and I'm going to sign your sovereignty off, basically, to the European Union anyway.
Yeah.
Then democracy where? Like how? What is the whole idea of this?
Well, we had the same. We had Sadiq Khan with the ultra-low emission zone in London. He put it out to tender, not to tender, but to find out if people wanted it. And 68% of people said no, and he's doing it anyway.
Right.
So it's all, but I'm just trying to think, what are we going to do? How are we going to fight them? Shield maiden of whiteness, as they call you in the Dutch press.
Yeah, that's how they call me. Yeah, amongst many other things.
Milkmaid.
Mark's Milk. Well, that one, title.
For 1 week only, poor old Mark's had to.
Yes, one off. No, I'm Mark's girl. But yeah, no, what are we going to do? The thing is, I would usually say we have to be tougher in our protests. But I was having an interesting conversation yesterday with an American about this, because he made a very valid point to me. He was like, yeah, but what protest? Okay. And then what happens, with the farmers who started protesting this summer, some courage left in these people, and they put up a pretty decent fight, but nothing changed.
And they've already taken the land off the farmers. They've just started doing it already.
They're starting to do that now. After this, in the next year, so 2023 is when they're going to start expropriating.
Surely the farmers are just going to go, no, but the government have guns, right? That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. So we were talking about constitutions and democracy and how just now, we basically have a shell of a democracy left. If the parliament doesn't have any say in what happens, if the government just does whatever they want, and what they do is cater to globalists and cater to all sorts of different institutions instead of to the will of the people, then you can't say that you have democracy.
Are farmers allowed guns in the Netherlands?
Nobody's allowed guns.
So they can't have a shotgun to shoot birds or something in the sky?
Well, that's the thing. So, if you're a hunter, maybe, but it's not, obviously the problem is not whether they have guns or not, but that our constitution doesn't protect us really against, our government, because we can't really do anything. That's what the conversation I was having with this American guy. It's like, at least the American Constitution, first of all, starts by saying that those rights, those human rights that you have, are inalienable, because they are endowed upon you by your creator, by God, not by a government that can take them away the moment that they create a crisis, or that they say that there's a crisis, which we've seen that they're able to do that, then you stand a little bit stronger. And also, if you have a Second Amendment, which is, people in Europe and probably here as well get really, really crazy when you talk about that, because they're like, oh, so are you saying that we should use violence? No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that the spirit of that constitution is much stronger, because the founding fathers put that in there as a means to protect yourself from a potentially tyrannical government.
Which has happened. I remember the first time I watched that Ben Shapiro thing, and when he chewed up Piers Morgan for breakfast, which is worth watching, by the way. And he said, Piers Morgan was like, why do you need guns? And he went, well, if we'd had a Second Amendment in America, in Germany in the 30s, my grandparents wouldn't be ashes on the floor of Auschwitz.
Exactly.
So I hear a lot more people talk about the Second Amendment in the UK in a more serious way, because I think you never used to walk past 8 policemen with machine guns in this country. It didn't happen.
No.
I think if the state are armed, the people should be allowed to be armed too. And yes, there are going to be horrible things as a result of it. But I'm terrified of what a bunch of guys with guns can do.
No, the thing is that our relationship to the state has completely shifted. Nobody seems to understand anymore that the state is here to serve us. They're called public servants for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it should be. And obviously it isn't like that. It's us. We pay. In Holland, the highest tax level is 52%. So 52% of your income goes directly to the state. That's your money. You're paying these people to make your life better. And what are they doing instead? Okay, they tell you that you're a racist if you're white. They tell you that you need to be vaccinated when they tell you that you should be. They tell you what you can eat. They tell you that you need to have a digital app on your phone that can track you everywhere. You're being treated as if you are basically, well, it's neo-feudalism.
Yeah, it is. Serfdom,
You're a
isn't it?
serf.
Yeah.
You're a serf. And we pay for it to be destroyed, to have our identity destroyed. And to, you know, house, we have over 1,000 immigrants coming in per week. Every week, you know, so we're paying for our own destruction. That's how I start to feel about this.
And the worst thing is we're totally corralled into not being able to say anything about it. And if you say anything about it, you're just denigrated as a racist and a nightmare.
Yeah.
We were, just before we started filming, we came up with our theory that maybe we hadn't gone far enough down the rabbit hole.
Oh, man.
What's your hypothetical solution?
No, I have these nightmares sometimes when I think about COVID, you know, that maybe they're even smarter than we think, right? So it's the opposition has been saying, the opposition to all these, you know, all these measures and the government overreach and stuff. We've always used the argument, oh, COVID's nothing, it's just a cold or it's just a flu, you know. But what if now there are reports coming out, studies coming out that are saying or suggesting that COVID in the long run may cause things like dementia and things. So then what if it's designed to be, hypothetically, to be a virus that doesn't really affect you that much, you know, so, but enough for the entire Western economy and the entire Western world to say we need to lock everyone down. So our economy is destroyed, you know, because we value human life, or, you know, apparently. So we need to do lockdowns, we need to close everyone into their houses and all that. And then when the opposition becomes stronger, they say, oh, why are we doing this? You know, we said the same thing. It's just a flu.
Yeah.
And what if it turns out not to be that much of a flu, but it turns out to be a flu that gives you dementia in 10 years? You know, then if you start to think that way, it's like doomsday.
Doomsday? Scorched death.
Yeah.
It's the only response. But you can't say anything. You just watch all of this stuff happen and you can't say anything. We're having climate lockdowns. They're practicing rezoning in Oxford, aren't they?
I saw it.
And I'm just like, when are people going to wake up?
Yeah, I think
and if they do wake up, is it going to be in
too
time?
late. Yeah.
Is it already too late? Ava, thank you for joining me. Go on.
Cheers.
Cheers. And have a safe flight back, and I will see you when you next come over.
Thank you.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It stays cold into the weekend. Ice, snow and fog for some, but for many others, clear skies by night and crisp winter sunshine by day. We've still got cold air in place across the UK, and we've still got low pressure in the North Sea, helping to maintain some showers. But it's mainly windward coasts where we'll see those showers, so that means that for Friday night it's northern Scotland into parts of Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. The showers at coastal level will be around rain and sleet, perhaps some hail, but inland and with any elevation falling as snow, covering for Snowdonia, for example, for higher parts of Cumbria, and certainly a lot of snow building up for northern Scotland. Now, parts of the northern Scotland where we see some clear spells overnight could dip to as low as -10 or lower. And for much of the UK, it's a widespread frost and some freezing fog patches to wake up to as well. That fog will be slow to clear, poor visibility in one or two spots continuing into the afternoon. Also, those icy patches to watch out for early on Saturday in the west and the north. A cold day to come for all of us, 1 to 3 Celsius typically, and below freezing where we've got the fog persisting and where we've got any higher parts. Now, into Saturday night, the fog and the frost will widely reform, and so another very cold night. There'll be an increased risk of some showers feeding into southeast Scotland, perhaps a covering inland here, some significant snow over the hills, and certainly in the north and the west there continues to be that risk of icy patches as we start off Sunday. Some dense freezing fog patches, especially for southern and central parts of the UK. Most of these will disperse by the afternoon, but some will continue. And then a signal for some more significant snow, perhaps to affect southeast England. Some uncertainty about that aspect of the forecast. But if it comes off, of course,